Okay, let's think for a second. Can you recall a time, maybe just a flash, when words really landed? Maybe something sharp you said and instantly wished you could take back.
Oh, definitely. Or even, a small comment someone else made that just stuck with you unexpectedly.
Exactly. We've all been there. It's amazing how these things, these words, which seem like nothing, can carry so much, well, weight.
Absolutely. Words are like our main tool for connection, right? But that power means they can build amazing things or cause real damage.
And that duality, that's exactly what we're diving into today. We're
Mhm.
looking at a really insightful source here. It's called James chapter 3 Breakdown, Words and Wisdom.
Right.
And our goal really is to get a handle on how to use language more constructively and maybe grasp what genuine wisdom actually looks like, in action.
Yeah, and this source does a great job connecting those two big ideas.
Mm.
The impact our speech has and the huge difference between just being smart
Mhm.
and having real wisdom that shapes who you are.
So it's practical stuff.
Very practical. How to engage with the world with maybe a bit more intention, more integrity.
Okay, let's jump in then. First up, the source talks about the weight of teaching or influence. It says teachers and not just school teachers.
No, it's broader than that.
They're held to a higher standard. Why
Sure.
start there? Why is that so important?
Well, the basic idea is that influence always comes with responsibility.
Hmm.
I mean, anyone whose words shape how others think or act.
Like parents, friends.
Exactly. Parents, friends, colleagues sharing info. They're all influencing people. They're teaching in that broad sense.
Hmm.
And their words, well, they could build up or they can tear down.
Huh. That really, that hits home because we're constantly learning from each other, aren't we? Often without even noticing, like a casual comment from someone at work or just how a friend talks about a problem.
Mm-hmm.
It all shapes us.
Mm.
And the source asks this great question. It says, am I using my voice to guide people toward truth or just to be heard? That really stops you in your tracks.
It really does. It pushes you to look at your motives. When you
Yeah.
speak up, are you trying to add something useful, offer some clarity? Or, yeah, are you just wanting attention or trying to win the conversation? Big difference.
Okay, let's shift gears a bit. The next point is, well, it's pretty stark. The destructive power of untamed speech.
Yeah, this is where the imagery gets really strong.
It uses these powerful metaphors. The tongue is like a bit in a horse's mouth or a rudder on a ship.
Or a tiny spark starting a huge fire.
Yes. What makes those comparisons work so well?
It's the scale, isn't it? These tiny things, a bit of metal, a small rudder, a little spark controlling or destroying something massive.
Right. A horse, a ship, a forest.
Exactly. And our tongue, it's small, but it can steer your whole life, your relationships, your job. And if it's uncontrolled,
Wildfires.
that's the word the source uses. Wildfires of gossip, lies, angry words, they just burn through trust, damage people's worth.
It's a very sobering picture. We've all seen it, maybe even caused it sometimes, that bit of gossip that spirals.
Or that heated comment you regret instantly.
Yeah. The source puts it bluntly, tame the tongue before it torches our lives. It definitely makes you reflect on times when words caused harm.
Absolutely. And it's not always the big explosions either. Sometimes it's that constant drip.
Mm.
Negativity, little put downs, resentment that erodes things slowly.
Mm-hmm. Now this next bit, it could sound a little discouraging at first glance.
Okay.
The source just states it flat out, no human being can tame the tongue. Calls it a restless evil full of deadly poison. That sounds, well, pretty final.
It does sound stark, but I think the key takeaway isn't hopelessness. It's more about realizing how incredibly hard it is to consistently control our speech just by, like, sheer willpower.
Okay, so it's not give up.
No, I think it points towards needing something deeper, a shift inside. The source connects it, saying, our words reflect our inner world. If the heart is wounded, the mouth will bite.
Ah, right. So it's like you can't just manage the symptoms.
Exactly. You can't just police your words if the source of the problem, the wounded heart, isn't addressed. It's treating the leaves, not the root.
That makes a lot of sense. If you've got anger or hurt simmering inside, it's bound to leak out in your words eventually.
Sooner or later, yeah.
So that question the source poses, if I want to change my words, I must let God heal my heart. That really puts the focus on the internal work first.
Precisely. It's recognizing that our words aren't just random. They bubble up from our beliefs, our fears, our old hurts. Dealing with that stuff is what really changes how we talk.
Okay, so if we can't perfectly control it on our own, that makes the next point feel even more significant. The inconsistency. blessing and cursing from the same mouth.
Yeah, that contrast is really striking.
Using the exact same tool, our tongue, for complete opposites. Praise 1 minute, insults the
The
next.
source uses that analogy of a spring, right? It can't give both fresh and salt water at the same time.
Right.
It just highlights the fundamental contradiction.
Mm.
It suggests a sort of brokenness, a gap between the values we say we have and how we actually speak, especially under pressure.
It definitely forces you to look inward. Have there been times, I mean, for all of us, when our words didn't match our values,
Yeah.
especially when things get tough?
We've all been there.
And the source says that's not who we were created to be. That line really lands.
It does. It speaks to like a potential for wholeness,
Mm.
for consistency, where our words reflect kindness even when it's hard.
Okay, now the discussion shifts a bit towards wisdom, specifically the difference between what the source calls earthly wisdom and heavenly wisdom.
Right, two very different kinds.
It contrasts worldly wisdom, things like jealousy, selfish ambition, with true wisdom, which shows up in like a good life lived with humility. What's the core difference there?
I think it boils down to the motivation and the outcome.
Hmm.
Earthly wisdom, as the source describes it, it's self-centered. It's about getting ahead, often by competing, comparing.
And it leads to chaos.
Leads to disorder, conflict, yeah. But heavenly wisdom, that's marked by humility. It's not just about being smart. It's about how you live gently, patiently, seeking peace. It's wisdom you can see in actions and attitude.
So it's less about knowing the most, more about being a certain way.
Exactly.
The reflective question here is sharp. Do I live with humility and peace, or am I always competing and comparing? Oof. That hits a nerve today, doesn't it?
It really does. In a world that often pushes us to outperform, but this wisdom, true wisdom, isn't about climbing over others. It's about adding something positive, fostering harmony.
Which brings us to the last main point. The actual characteristics of this wisdom from above. The source basically gives a checklist.
Yeah, it's quite specific.
Pure motives, peace-loving, considerate, submissive, which it clarifies as willing to yield, not being a doormat.
Right. Reasonableness.
Full of mercy, produces good fruit, and sincere.
That's quite a list, a high bar. It is a high standard, definitely. But it gives us a really clear picture of what genuine wisdom looks like day to day. These aren't just ideas. They show up in how we interact.
In marriage, friendships.
Leadership, collaborating at work, yeah. Think about it. A peace-loving person tries to resolve conflict, not escalate it. Someone full of mercy forgives easily. A considerate person thinks about others' feelings.
And the source makes that great point. It's more important to be righteous, doing the right thing, than just being right in an argument.
That's such a crucial distinction, shifting from winning to just, living wisely.
Yeah. And that final question it leaves us with, do people feel God's wisdom when they're around me, or just hear my opinion? Wow. That really makes you think about your actual impact.
It really does. Are we just adding to the noise with our opinions, or are we embodying something deeper, something that leaves people feeling maybe understood, supported, maybe even a bit wiser themselves?
Okay, so pulling it all together, we've seen the incredible power of words, how they can build, how they can destroy.
The sheer difficulty of controlling them consistently.
Right. And that deep link between our inner state, our heart, and what comes out of our mouths.
We looked at that jarring inconsistency, blessing and cursing, and the big difference between self-serving earthly wisdom.
And that humble, peace-seeking wisdom from above with all those characteristics like purity, mercy, sincerity.
And for you listening, the real point isn't to feel bogged down by rules. It's about realizing the huge impact of your words and the kind of character that true wisdom builds.
Yeah, these insights from the source, they're practical tools for hopefully better communication and real personal growth, not just abstract ideas.
Definitely not.
So as you go about your day, maybe chew on this. Thinking about those two kinds of wisdom, what's maybe one small shift, just one adjustment in how you communicate that could make the biggest positive difference in your relationships?
That's a great question. And maybe also knowing how tough it is to truly tame the tongue. What's one small consistent practice you could start, maybe even today, to just become a little more mindful of the words you choose?
Because really, this deep dive, it's just the beginning, right? The real learning happens out there when you start applying these ideas.